7:02, we'll call the meeting to order. We don't have much of an audience today, no offense, Barry. But if anybody here, first I'll say that Chelmsford Telemedia is broadcasting this meeting live and recording it for a rebroadcast later. If there's anybody here, Barry, that has or would like to say anything for public input?
Not right now.
Okay, so the first item on our agenda was an update from Steve about some issues that we asked them to look into at the last meeting. Megan confirmed that that slide, that GFRC slide, was steel on the inside, that they could only do it at a 48-inch height, and that if they use that in lieu of the roller slide, it was going to double the cost. So it pushed the budget $10,000 over to go with the natural-looking GFRC over the roller slide. And they also pointed out that the log tunnel slide, the GFRC slide, was not community build friendly. So they were supposed to get, Steve was supposed to send us a new design Friday. We didn't get that, and then they didn't get it done today either. After I sent you guys the notice that there were no new designs to look at, Megan and Joe sent me the presentations that they sent to Steve on Thursday, which is this design. So what it looks like to me is that they made those changes that we talked about at the last meeting, but the equipment wasn't moved around to accommodate the 30-foot buffer from the abutter on what would be the lower section of this, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks like they did move the poured in place from the front of the 2 to 5 year old section to the back by the, I forget the name of that spinner thing. They moved the poured in place back to that corner.
I'm confused. They had it around the spinner thing. They were getting rid of it around the bopper, the double-sided bopper thing. Is that more poured in place under the 2 to 5 in loft than there was before?
I don't know. They're not
Looks
here.
like it's just gone, but I
Yeah,
could also
that's
be
why
remembering
That's what I'm
incorrectly.
wondering.
I wouldn't take this necessarily as the finished design. This is the design that O'Brien sent over to Steve. So I'm guessing that they obviously have to move the
Yeah, lots to be
other
done.
stuff around. So I'm not exactly sure what changes are left to be done with this. But this is what I was sent.
Okay, thanks for sharing.
Any other questions on that?
Are we expecting to get a new design before the public input session next week, or do they have any idea?
I will ask Steve when they expect to send that to us. That's all I know.
Because this change here with the swings, Steve is gonna have to make is gonna be important to some of the abutters.
Correct, and my understanding was that this design was going to get put into the master plan design so that we could see, he was also going to do the pathways, leading, at least the pathway leading from the upper parking lot to show how that would connect.
Drop it in like so you can see it next to the field
Yeah.
and stuff, you mean?
Right.
Right, yep, okay.
So you can see it in relation to where like the bathrooms are going to be, and to see it to where the lacrosse field's going to be, and just how it all sort of shakes out. And my understanding is also that the tree locations aren't necessarily spot on either. So on this, but I think they are on the master plan. So this was assuming that we were going to get the design and have a discussion. So I was going to ask that the files be sent to me for dissemination to everyone and the public by the 23rd. I'll just have to clarify that with Steve. I did send the last copy of the plan that we discussed to Weston and sort of outlined what we were looking for. And that in the area to the right of the where the shade structure is, the area that has the shade structure in it, identified that as the possible area for the natural play area. That would include potentially a sensory garden, the perennial garden, it's all here, the Chelmsford Rocks area, the animal tracks, and then the nature scavenger hunt sign. So he was going to work on just some ideas of, Weston was going to work on some ideas of what types of plants and what sort of things that they could do in an area. And then we were going to give them the design to make it fit. So once we get the new design over, I'll send that to them and sort of let them fit that stuff in. And hopefully it'll all work out, so we'll get something on paper so we can put it in front of the public to kind of show this is at least what the idea is.
I like it.
Any comments or questions or anything on that? It's kind of incomplete. It's kind of hard to talk about, but
I
don't-
missed the whole debate about changing the slide. So, what was the reason for changing the slide from the taller roller to the, was it a log slide?
I don't think there was really any debate. I just was interested in finding out information about it. I think it's obviously a no-go.
Unfortunately, it's out of our reach.
It's just
But it was
not.
more of a aesthetic thought, still keeping a steel one, so we had something that would be friendly for kids with cochlear implants, but to have something looking a little more natural.
Ah, okay.
And yeah, with that kind of price difference, I think we
They're
can
cool
say
looking.
there's not
It's
the-
at Yentl. I was interested in finding out information about it, but I don't think there was much debate. It was just getting a update. I mean, I was hoping we'd get an update on adding the GFRC rock climber thing to the tower thing as well, but
we just wait.
it may be in there. I don't know. You know?
yeah,
We
I'm
didn't
just
get
I'm
any
not
renderings or
sure
anything, so
why.
There's no like updated equipment list, because I know she's provided that a couple times.
nope. It was this, and then a larger plan, and then a DWG file, which I think is an AutoCAD file.
Yeah, it's a drawing. Yeah.
All right, well, we'll just wait on it.
Any other questions or comments? No.
Nope.
Marcus.
I'm good.
So the next item is a signage plan discussion. And the goal here, I think, is for us to roughly outline what we expect the signage to be at the playground, right? And what the content on those signs would be, roughly what they would look like. And then to develop a budget off of that. I got a cost estimate for printing on half-inch PVC board from a printer that I use in Rhode Island that I actually use for the temporary signs. And it was $8 a square foot. So roughly each panel at 2.5 by 4 feet, which we think is what, this is the castle and the trees plans, right, signs. So roughly, it looks like it's about 2.5 by 4 feet. So roughly, it's about $80 per panel, right? And their panels are, this is the ones that they have. They've got one panel is the name, the story of Castle in the Trees, the rules, and then the contact information for people who have questions. And then they've got two specific sponsor panels, one for their categories of sponsorships, right? Platinum, gold, diamond, da-da-da-da. And then the second for specific equipment sponsors. And then the fourth panel is the volunteer committee member town official board. They've also got the etched stone in their brick wall, their stone wall there. And then they've also got, for the 2 to 5 playground, they have the smaller sign for Aiden's Playground with the name on the front, the story, and then the donors and stuff on the back there. Any questions or comments on the Castle in the Trees?
No,
I like them.
Yeah, I liked it. I think you can kind of make like a little almost, 3-sided thing too out of it, and so it's not one long thing, depending on space, so it becomes flexible with the arrangement of the panels.
I think that is actually a 4-sided.
It is.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
Yeah, we were there today,
Okay.
again. Yeah. So I think, it's a pretty good way to do it. I remember Steve had talked about for quotes, he would need exact text, and so it's pretty clear we won't have exact text for quite a while because we won't
Right.
know. So this is gonna be one of the last minute, I mean, we can kind of have the design, but we'll have to, who ends up doing what. We're not
Yeah,
gonna
I think
know.
we'll have, I think we'll have a general idea, but you're right, we won't have, we won't have the sponsorship information until probably, early June,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah.
And I like that they have their logo on it. I hope we would
Yeah.
consider putting the Friendship Park logo there to continue to like get that out there to the public.
I agree.
But yeah, I think,
One thing you may want to think about is whether you want to take advantage of this just to identify the different sections of the park. So, in other words, you've got the wildlife sanctuary, and you got the playing fields, and then you got the playground. There may be something you want to include on that. There may not, I don't know.
One of the things that I felt like was possibly missing that I'd like to see is a kind of a community bulletin board, a place where people can tack up communications to other people.
oh, I thought we said we were gonna have that maybe built separately as a scout project or something, kind of very similar to what was there now. I don't wanna call it a bird feeder or a house, but like a little thing.
Yeah, we could, or we could look at, and I'll show you a mock-up that we worked on, that actually John Bowden worked on, that might include it. So it limits the number of signs. And I think that we all agree that we want to try to keep the number of signs to a minimum. But this is an idea that would incorporate all of the Castle in the Trees panel categories, right? With an additional bulletin board, and then the thing that Barry just talked about, which would be a map, and then maybe just a description of the two other major areas of the park. If we didn't want to include those two in this, then it could shrink to a 2-panel, back to back, right, front to back, that it'd have to be visible and accessible from both sides, wherever it's located.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing that we'd want to locate it near the front entrance, whichever one ends up being the main entrance. And I will say too, this is a little bit off topic, but I did hear back from, I did speak with a volunteer who's 99% sure that they're willing to rebuild the,
The covered bridge?
yes, thank you.
Awesome,
Covered
oh,
pathway.
good.
Right.
So they're 99% sure that they're willing to take on the leadership role in that. Their idea there is that it would be kind of a community-led thing, that they would try to get scouts to actually build it, but they would sort of get behind it and get that stuff done. And then I committed us to getting the permits and all that stuff done, which is already done, really, but, you know.
Great.
I ran down to the park today, and I ran into a couple people and was talking to them about the park, and one of the people I talked to, I was mentioning the community build aspect and stuff, and she was suggesting she had a child in the high school. She said a lot of kids in the high school need community service projects, and to get information out to the high school, particularly for community build, but I would imagine similarly for other things we want to have done, that we could sell it as a community service
Right.
Mm-hmm.
opportunity for high schoolers looking for, I don't know, National Honor Society or whatever they want to do their community service for. So we get that out to the appropriate people at the high school. I don't know
Yeah.
who those people are, but I'm sure someone does.
And it's not just National Honor Society, all the students in the high school have to do community service.
Yeah.
At what grade did they, because didn't she say something about age group, we want to
Yeah,
be at a certain
so-
age?
Right,
wise,
and
so
well,
like
in
a
terms
16
of
and
the
older or
community
something,
build,
or-
yes,
yeah.
I actually mentioned that to the mother I was talking to, and she said, well, I know a lot of the 17-year-olds and stuff, they need to do the community service, but, I mean, we could have only the older kids do the community build stuff, but some of the other projects that we, that aren't the community build day, say the getting people involved in the rebuilding of the covered bridge, we don't have to limit that to.
Or raking the mulch that they
Actually,
put in
for
afterwards.
insurance, we probably have to limit it to 16 and older.
Or the scouts that would be involved, 16 and
They're
older?
covered under this Scout Troops insurance. But I know from Table of Plenty, there were no volunteers under 16. So,
Okay.
and that was,
We can still get the information out to the high
Yeah.
school and specify
Yeah, we
the
can
age.
definitely work it out. And then I think there's gonna be, I mean, if it's not necessarily the covered bridge, then there'll be the shade structure for the bathroom. You know what I mean? It's still close enough to the playground that it needs to be, that it's connected. You know what I mean? So I think there'll be opportunities for us to target those groups.
and childcare and activities. I mean, some very sports-minded young men and women might want to run relays or something and keep the kids busy.
Possibly, yeah.
So the boards on the left are the front and back, right?
Yep.
And then the smaller boards would be for the inside natural play area that Weston's doing. And so, Hmm?
By the shade structure, right?
Yes,
Yep,
well,
okay.
theoretically.
Right, hopefully that's where it's gonna go, we'll see, yeah, okay.
And then, so the front would be sort of the, we could potentially name it, if we wanted to sell it, sell the whole natural area thing, or just call it the natural play area or land, whatever that is. And then it tells the story, and then has sort of the description of the different things that are in there that we talked about that Weston's gonna work on. Then the back would be, we've talked about the scavenger hunt idea to lead people around the trails, and so that would be sort of that opportunity, and then any other thing that we had to explain, like Chelmsford Pass Rocks or whatever else we needed to do. So that's sort of the idea there, and it's sort of a lower sitting, friendlier sign than the taller.
Yeah, thanks for putting the people in, that's super helpful for
Context of
understanding,
size.
yeah.
And actually, the lower typed signs is what the Family Connection Playground in Billerica used for all of their donors and everything. And they were able to get a typeface that fit on that. Theirs looked like it might be brass, though.
What would express?
Their plaques.
Okay.
Isn't the one that's there now on the rock, is that brass or?
It's like bronze or something, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know if that's gonna necessarily be, you know-
Financially feasible?
No, no, I don't know if it's gonna be the front of the, I don't know if that's gonna be where the front entrance is.
Oh,
You know
yeah,
what
no,
mean?
I just
So-
meant, if we
So-
wanted to keep with the past, I know that the previous, that has the donors on it, right? What does that have on it?
I believe so, yes.
Some,
And
you're
and
right.
it's like committee, everything's on
Yeah,
there.
yeah, but
Um,
that's a little,
I noticed on the castle and the trees, you probably can't read it if I go back to it, but underneath the Welcome to the Castle and the Trees playground on the left-hand panel, that story tells the story of how this is the second version of a redone playground, and it talks about the community that came together back then and came together this time. So I think it's kind of a fitting story for us as well. So. John, is there anything, you worked on this mock-up, is there anything you wanted to add to the
Well,
discussion?
You would give me some feedback about the number of panels devoted to certain content. So on this particular mock-up, I did allocate a full one for the map and a full one for the other areas of the park, just because I feel like I tried to do it all in one, and it was, the map ended up being kind of small and everything. So, if you go back to Castle in the Clouds, I guess my question is, and we'll know when we have the full list of names and everything, I feel like we could probably fit everyone, sponsors and volunteers, onto 2 panels, and so that's what I'm envisioning. But if we have, a good problem to have would be to have way too many people, right? And then we can deal with that at the time. But initially, I just wanted to see how it would look with 2 panels for that purpose, front and back. I think their signs, they could have gone probably a lot smaller on some of the names, or have additional columns or something like that. I think they could have fit in a lot more. So, I'm just showing you how on the contributor panels, the rightmost ones, it will, I think for sure would be able to fit in 2 columns, and, and maybe even more, I don't know. But I liked having, for the reason I gave earlier, I liked having one panel dedicated for the map, just because that's something that you normally see on kind of that big of a scale in order to situate yourself. And I thought it was important enough to maybe give those other 2 pieces of the park their own panel to describe a little bit about what they offered. But all this is very,
so,
we can change this in a heartbeat. So it's not a big deal, but this was just the first pass of it.
quick question, is this for the playground, or is this for the field as a whole? Because it looks like more information you'd have at the front of the whole Roberts Field, is that not?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because we're gonna have a separate welcome area for the whole.
Yeah, I think this is for the playground. And the idea was that we could have, if we're gonna have to use the front and backs, and if we're gonna include the bulletin board here, then we'd have that extra panel. And the thinking was just to kind of put the park generic information kind of on there, and then that allows us not to have to put another sign up somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yes, we would, because there are going to be people who want that information who are not going to be going up to the playground.
Okay, I think they may be though, because it's gonna be it would be close to the walking track, right? So it could still sort of be I think the majority of people are gonna be going to the playground. So, I mean, I'm not debating
I
you
guess
on
I'm
not,
confused.
but-
I thought that historically with the master plan that there was a whole conversation about the front welcome center
Yeah.
thing for the whole Roberts Field, and I would have figured that a lot of that signage would have been over there, and I thought we were talking about signage that's more playground focused. Don't get me wrong, I like the sign. I would have thought we would have seen more playground specific stuff for this, and then have there's a whole welcome thing that I thought had been in the master plan.
Well, what other content for playgrounds would you expect to see?
Well, I
like a
mean,
map of the
if you
playground,
did the castle and the trees,
So the left, I know it's hard to see, but so the leftmost one is the story and the rules, just like their leftmost one,
mm-hmm,
right? Upper left, black background there. So
Mhm.
that's all playground stuff.
mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then the two contributors are obviously,
On the
Back
other
to
side.
back.
playground sponsor type of stuff, right? And then the two in the lower left would be other areas of the park, including the map.
And I would recommend that
So
the
3 of the 6 are
that one panel on the bottom only be for the park, that the panel on the left be either the volunteer committee panel or the sponsor panel. That was, so that way those numbers, so everything would match up with what Castle and the Trees did. The only difference is that we've added one more panel that would be the bulletin board and then the back. And the back could be playground specific, or it could be general park information, because we are taking people out of the playground and trying to encourage them to go into the park.
Well, and this would be something we do first, right? I mean, what you're talking about with the big entrance of the whole park itself, that's
Yeah,
bigger
there's
project
a
down the
whole.
road. Who knows when that's gonna happen, right?
Well, there's a whole master plan, like, that, I'm talking from having sat in on the previous committee, that, when I was in the public side of things, where there was lots of discussion about the master plan, having an entry, I don't think of the words,
Park welcome community area.
that,
That's the exact
Right.
slide from the
Park
master
Yes.
plan.
Yeah.
that, with the rocks and the stuff, and,
So we hadn't really put a sign in there. I mean, there was the replacing the sign in the parking lot, that red Roberts Field thing in the parking lot. But we had talked about potentially doing for that area between the bathroom shade structures and the playground, you know.
I thought the information kiosk would have been,
You know,
Right, but what I'm saying is, if we have, to your point, right, we have the signage, we have one panel dedicated to, hey, here's the whole park, that's over by the playground, it's cost, what, $80, right? And it's there for now until we get to this, right? And it's still there, and it still warrants being there, because if people go to the playground, they wanna see what's going on at the whole park. I'm not saying only have that as the signage for the whole park, I'm saying just don't take it away.
So-
Right,
I think what Marcus is saying, if I understood you correctly, it doesn't have to be either or. You
right,
could have a general sign with a map and some other information close to Friendship now,
mm-hmm.
and then move some of those over once the rest of the park gets funded.
Yeah, I don't think we want to move some.
Well,
I wouldn't, no, I wouldn't move it, I'd still leave it there, because it still would warrant being there, because people are gonna go right to the park, right to the playground themselves, and then they wanna see information about the whole park from the playground area, and then we can still do this whole giant park welcome community areas, in the future, right? I'm just not.
Yeah, and then I guess just decide if it's sign overload to put, another sign in the welcome area. I was just thinking that if we put it in one compact area, that would kind of cut down on the signage areas. But there also may be other things in the playground that you want to point out too. So maybe that panel's better used for a playground map, or
yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with it saying information about the rest of what's at Roberts Field. I was confused when I looked at it going, oh, I kind of thought this is more what we were talking about doing for the community area, and I didn't think we'd be talking about that now. But, and I don't, signage overload is a bit much, but while people will be going, a lot of people will be going directly to the playground, I think where the welcome area was gonna be was kind of gonna be on your way to the playground, right? Isn't it?
It's kind of lower, it's that, I wish I had a map, I don't have the map to show you, but it's, if
The
If-
lower lot.
It's like halfway up the
it's
It's-
kind
it's
of a
like
sloped area.
the sloped area between the upper and lower lot on the grassy.
So we would ideally have the one pathway going from the upper lot here and the other one here, and it's that grassy
Yeah,
area in
triangles
between.
kind of between
Mhm.
the two.
Or the upper parking lot brick pathway connects to,
That
um,
side entrance.
connects to where the sideways, covered bridge is on the top.
Mm-hmm.
So it would come sort of at a angle off from in front of new. Does that make sense?
So where
Yeah.
would we put this signage?
So, I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. I'm guessing it's gonna go somewhere, wherever the main entrance to the playground is, that's where it should be. And if we decide to do back-to-back panels, it needs to be somewhere where people are gonna be able to see both sides, right? So it could be potentially,
Towards the parking.
Opposite side of the path from the climbing structure from the,
maybe,
And it's closer to the other areas too. I think it would be kind of isolated on that other, if you left it back on the old existing pathway.
Right.
You have to go
Mhm.
really out of your way to figure
Right,
that out,
right.
just to go back across to the nature trails, so,
right?
yeah, I think that's a good place.
And if it's out in that area, then it kind of does fill that need for information about the park in general, you know what I mean? And if it allows us to cut down on another sign,
Yeah, it just seems like an odd place to put the maximum amount of signage about the park. I like having some information about what's the rest of the Roberts Field at the playground to draw people out to the other things, but I guess for the people who aren't going to ever be heading over to the playground,
You were thinking you want to have.
I
another
would have
spot.
thought that there would be another
I
master,
think
master
there
sign.
needs to be
Right.
And
another
I-
master sign.
Mhm.
And I would have thought we'd keep that in consideration while we do this one, so it looks like a subset and not like a competing
which,
One,
thing.
there's one thing you haven't talked about or shown on the signs that I've seen. You may want to have a panel section that talks about the future of Roberts Field. Because we've got the funding right now for the playground. People may come and, say, well, what about upgrading the playing fields? What about this and that?
the nice thing is that with the
So-
bulletin boards, we can kind of,
Yeah.
we
I
can,
think that's the best way to
we
tackle
can pop those
that.
guys up and then pop them down when we meet the goals and stuff. So that kind of gives us that flexibility.
Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to point out too was, we've got, we're gonna have the walking track. We've divvied up the park into three big sections: the playground, the playing fields, and then the wildlife sanctuary. I would envision that we would probably have a sign, maybe not a big monolithic thing like we're talking about for the playground. I shouldn't say that, but maybe not the 3-panel thing like we're talking about for the playground, but at least something that defines those three areas, right? So we have the exercise circuit that has the walking path and sort of has a description of all the different exercise machines that are there and the things that people should do there, right? And then we have sort of a similar kind of a sign somewhere for the wildlife sanctuary as well. So I don't think it's only just the playground.
Yeah, I thought we had discussed in terms of a kiosk that would have these maps and also paper maps that people could pull out so that if they want to do the circuit and they want to make notes about how they felt on each machine, they could take that home with them. Or if they wanted to do the nature trail, but they see there are several, they might want to have a physical map to figure out,
You
No,
could certainly
where am
apply
I?
just a little box on there that would,
Yeah.
that would fill the,
and that's what I was envisioning down closer to the parking lots and also where the covered kiosk for the bathrooms were going to be. And I thought
Okay.
you were talking about doing something around there that would include
Yeah.
all of this.
We're just, I don't know, we're just talking, so.
Okay.
There's one option you could consider, and I haven't thought through this very much, but right now you've got the three signs, 3 panels in the front and the back, right? Another arrangement could be a stand of the 3 signs, in in a triangular fashion.
Yeah.
Then you'd have two of those. So then-
But we need 4 signs, right? If we're gonna use the,
But,
if we're gonna use the castle in the trees as the starting point, if we're gonna duplicate those panels and content,
Was there a reason why equipment need to be separate from the sponsor? The equipment sponsors rather than the second and third panels, do they have to be separate signs?
I thought about
Is it just
combining them
spacing,
too.
Was
I
Yeah.
think it could be combined.
I just, I don't know, the way, I think of the main point of, the primary point of the signs is to tell people about the park and what's available and stuff like that, rather than thank people, which is extremely important. But I feel like 50 to 75% of the real estate for the thanking is maybe a little too much, so I was thinking, certainly those 2 on the right, I mean, they're not using all their space.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if we could fit it
The
on one.
yeah, but I didn't know if there was another reason why you wanted them separate, the equipment stuff versus.
I was just following the.
No, I think this is just what they
Okay,
have.
all right.
I think it was for probably space reasons, right? Like if we didn't have enough space on the board to fit everything, then we'd have to put it on 2. Like
Right.
here, they,
Right.
I don't think they had space to fit everything on 1, so they put it on 2, and the second board just didn't really fill out. Or they could have, again, changed the font or whatever, but if we were able to fit it all on 1 and make it look good, then I'm all for that, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure we're gonna have enough sponsors and everything that we'll need 6 boards,
Wow.
right?
Right.
Because we're just
Yeah.
gonna be so popular.
Town of
And we have
Chelmsford
additional
taxpayers,
numbers.
#1 sponsor.
The one thing I was gonna say though, so the panel where the 3, and we're kind of arguing the whole middle piece where it showed the whole park itself, why don't we just have those 2 middle panels be bulletin boards, like you were saying, like, so they're interchangeable, so because again, when we put this together, we're not gonna have the full map of the park anyway,
That's true.
right? It's not gonna be done 100%,
The
so.
walking trail,
the walking trail,
exercise
all-
passing.
Yeah, all that's not gonna be completed yet. We could put up a hypothetical, like, hey, here's what we're planning, but
Right.
we'd have to change it, so we wouldn't wanna print that. We would want it to be something we could change out. So why not just in that middle portion, on both sides of it, just have it so we can change it in.
That's a
have
great
it
idea.
I kinda like the idea of having the monoliths as opposed to the wide panels, just in terms of, we want everything open and everything you'll be able to see. Right now, we're talking about
Blocking the view.
blocking some substantial entrance area to the park view-wise with 8+ feet of signage.
So how about if we define sort of the mandatories, what we think has to be included and let's be specific that it's the playground signage plan, right?
I think the first panel, like, we definitely need that, right? Name, story, rules, contact.
Right.
Maybe the sponsors combine into one, because I do not like the fact, like you said, the thanking becomes the whole message. It's not that we don't want to thank, but,
So one sponsor board,
huh?
one sponsor board?
I would hope that we can fit it that way. If we can't, fine, but, the goal would hopefully maybe be that.
Well, you could do 2 that are combining the sponsors and the committee chairs.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, how it pans out, combining
Just move
sponsors.
Move those 3 down to 2, in other words, and then
Yeah,
Yeah.
you freed up one.
yeah, I think
And
so.
is there anything against our, say, for volunteers and other contributors, see website?
Sure, we could do anything.
On the
Yeah, I would-
contact info for additional information, I mean, I think that's super simple to have that on there.
See,
Because we don't,
I'm having trouble connecting with the notion of our needing a story.
Well, a lot of people participated in the first playground, and a lot of people have come and talked to us about, oh, don't lose our bricks, we put so much effort into the first playground, and so I
Yeah.
think there's still a lot of attachment, understandably, to the effort that went into the first playground, so I think having the story and noting those who came before that we're building on,
Okay.
I see it as, it's part of the community, it's part of the history of the community, and I thought it was cool reading that.
Yeah, plus it's a really unique, I mean, this is gonna be a unique playground for the town,
Mhm.
so,
I
I'm
think it's
surprised to hear you
important.
say you don't like the story. Like, or don't,
It's not that I don't like it, it's
It's
that
really
I'm
important.
not connecting with it.
okay. I mean, I think it's gonna tell the inclusive thing, and it's gonna talk about community, that's obviously, we're gonna
if I
have to.
promise to write you a great story, is that okay? Okay.
When you're writing pictures of press.
So we have one name panel, one sponsor board, one committee board,
And then one bulletin board?
And then a bulletin board?
And the bulletin
Yeah.
board, I think so.
The bulletin board, do you want to construct that a little differently, so it's like a case or something like that, so you can put material in it?
That's what I was, kind of envisioning in my
Yeah.
head, something
Yeah.
that's like
Right.
waterproof, that you can put, material inside and then.
Like with a plastic,
Yeah,
Something so that when it
plexiglass or-
pours,
It doesn't get ruined.
it doesn't get
Yeah.
destroyed.
Not like a cork board where you're just like tacking
No.
stuff up.
so a hinged, door
Yes. Yeah.
with
I
the plastic.
love that idea.
Mhm.
I can just tell you how many of those I've seen broken. It becomes a big maintenance thing, and then when they shatter the plastic pieces too, like all over the ground, like a safety hazard.
Yeah,
I
and
think
also-
the alternatives are no one can post anything that's actually gonna be able to be seen after the second rainstorm.
Or you post it in just like one of the plastic sleeves for your binder and put some tape across the bottom. and
Or we
turn
can
it
put
that
a
way.
roof on we can put a lean-to thing on, across
Yeah.
the top.
I mean, I think people will figure that out and understand. I love the idea of having the plastic. I know how quickly they get broken and are messy. And
The
I
other-
don't wanna make a maintenance issue that then they'd say like, we're always cleaning up this and replacing this.
The other downside is that it limits who can put a flyer up to who can get in touch with somebody with the key to the,
Well, you don't
Hinge
have to
door.
make it, I guess you don't have to make it locked. If you don't make it locked, then you have other problems, but
Mm-hmm.
you,
So
50.
you want a limit, or you don't want that limit?
I think
Saying
you,
he doesn't want a limit, but he's imagining a lock in it. I was imagining it just being the catch, It's, you know.
You know, I can't believe that they don't make this kind of cabinetry that's weather and reasonably.
Vandal-proof.
well, I think we could probably construct something, some sort of a sheltery kind of a thing that might tie into the look of the,
Covered bridge,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, that's why I kinda said
Mhm.
like the house thing, when it has the little roof, it gives some level of
Have that
protection.
style.
You know, it's
Doesn't
not
the
perfect.
Castle and Latrice, I can't remember. Does the Castle and Latrice thing have a roof to it?
Just the way the design is, I mean, I don't think it's a weather shielding roof,
Right, but I mean,
yes.
it's
Has
a
top, if you will.
square, it's a
I
square
kind of think of it
pillar,
as
right?
like a castle pillar.
Right.
Yeah. the roof.
So-
So going back to the bulletin board, are we saying no to the hinge door or yes to the hinge door?
I like the idea of the hinge door, but that's, I wouldn't lock it. I would just have a catch on it.
I think we want to figure out the mechanical details.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
maybe open to options, right, at this point.
It's gonna add to expense, and from my perspective, I think it's gonna limit the number of people that are gonna be able to post. I think you're gonna have to put a lock on it. Otherwise, kids are gonna open it up and swing it, and it's gonna be broken quickly. I can say that the scout that was here a few meetings ago, he built, two, like where the dogs are walking by on the right-hand side, he built two small sort of structures that had a hinge door with a plastic thing on it, and it was literally there for a day, and somebody smashed it with a rock.
Are you serious?
Kidding. Oh.
So one of them's still standing, and the other one's, I
Okay,
took the
never
plastic
mind.
out.
I had higher hopes for our neighborhood. Meh, meh.
Neil's smiling.
Well, I mean, I'm just feeling
Kind of
so bad for
unfortunate-
him because
know.
like I remembered I was like, but they
Yeah.
get busted. I just didn't bring up, and that guy's sign in particular, his project. It was just unfortunate. I'm not smiling. Sorry to be mean. It's just like we have faith in our
Recognition.
community.
I
but-
wanted to have more faith.
I know.
Sorry.
Sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. Alrighty.
So should I come back to the hinge door, or do we want to take a vote on the hinge door? I just think it's gonna be an extra thing, cost-wise, to construct.
Apparently, we
Well,
already know we have that
must we
particular type of
construct-
vandal at that particular park, so just forget the hinge doors. I won't vote for
Hold
it.
it, must we construct it? Aren't there places where you can probably purchase something that's already pre-made?
Same thing. I mean, it's just,
Still
we have to
cost,
develop a
yeah.
budget. That's what we have
Yeah.
to give to Steve. We have to tell
Okay.
Steve, this is what we have in mind,
Okay.
and then develop a budget
I
from
guess
that.
it's not a necessity, and if it's gonna break, then, yeah,
Be broke.
then it's not gonna be any good anyway, if it's
So
broken.
if we do,
Regular bulletin board.
4 panels, then we can eliminate one of the 3, and it could be just the 2 panels side by side, back-to-back, prints.
So we
Right.
don't want to do
The middle with the corkboard.
a pillar, a square.
Well, I mean, we have 1 name panel, we have 1 sponsor board, 1 committee board, and a bulletin board. So we have 4 panels that we've said that we want to include. So that's actually 6 panels. So we could remove 2 of those panels, and so it would end up being a 3 column
You can-
with panels in between, right?
So you don't wanna do
A walk around?
that,
Yeah, I
Like-
don't know what else to call it.
Oh, like-
Build a tower.
Yeah.
Right,
and
a
each
tower, and
side-
then
they
you'd
wouldn't
have
be
the-
double-sided.
You can have 2 panels and then a single panel, so it's
So
it's
a
like
s-
a triangular form with 2,
Mhm.
2.
a quadrangular form.
So a
That,
square
what she's doing.
box.
Yeah.
Here, like this, right
I'm,
here.
I'm a very visual
4 or
person.
3?
This is
Four.
good for
We
you.
we need 4 apparently panels, right? And then you
Okay.
put the
Four.
roof on top, and you
Yeah.
have the coverage, and that's pretty much what triangle trees.
Triangle or, yeah.
So you guys would prefer a sort of a square kind of a thing with a void in the middle versus the flat.
I think it
Yeah.
will take up less space. It will encourage
Inhibit less views.
inhibit less views,
not
and then it
inhibit
gives
views.
you a tower. I mean a roof
Yeah.
built in sort of.
For the columns or for the things that are gonna hold them up, would you prefer it to be natural wood, or would you prefer it to be reminiscent of the metal poles in the playground?
I think it should echo back to the poles, unfortunately, of the playground, even though my preference is
I-
more wood.
I was gonna say I prefer wood.
Neil, why do you need to, why can't you have wood? What's
No, I'm saying my preference is wood, but I feel if
He's
it's a
trying to
playground sign, I'm trying to
feed
tie
into
it to
the-
the playground, so I'm wondering if it shouldn't look more like the playground.
Do we think that we need to include a roof? Because if we need to do a roof, then that's reminiscent of the,
The tower.
no, of the
Of the covered,
Covered
bridge.
covered bridge.
That's the thing. I would tie it to the covered bridge and make it wood,
Yeah,
because
that's
it's
fine
more
too.
natural.
You wouldn't or would?
I would
Okay.
wood with the wood. I would
with
use
a
the
double
wood.
And I would look into a composite material that looks like wood,
Yeah,
just for durability.
the hardy plank.
Or the cedar shakes might work too, because they used cedar shakes on the original one, and those held up
Well,
relatively. I guess whatever they
For
use
the
on
sides
the,
and roof, but the support poles, I'd be concerned about pressure-treated wood having a particular lifespan, and that's what we ran into in terms of having to replace the whole playground, so that any support poles should be something that will last beyond 20 years.
I hear ya.
And be composite instead of,
Yeah, but what's the
pressure
covered
treated.
bridge gonna be made out
Well, it's gonna be made out of wood.
Probably
of, right?
would.
well, it could be out of composite, I mean, if that's the conditions that we want to put on it.
So maybe we can say the material like composite, maybe, or maybe something else, like, we'll see kind of what the bridge.
You get price, I mean, composite's really expensive.
Yeah.
That's, so
that's why I
a
would
pole
limit
is
it to
one
the
thing,
poles.
but to do the whole covered bridge in composite would probably,
I would say
Yeah,
replacing the
triple the price at
poles on the.
least.
It's not gonna
I
look
think
the same, right?
replacing the poles on the signage in 15 years is not gonna be a huge
Exactly.
expense.
Exactly, it's not like,
And the natural, sorry, natural.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, my son is sick. I have not slept much.
And so we want the roof to be reminiscent of the covered bridge, right?
Yes.
So it's a
for me.
gabled roof probably, with some sort of a thing and filler in between the gables that looks like the covered bridge.
Whatever
yeah, that's.
the wood words are that makes it look like the covered bridge. I don't have that.
I know I told you guys I have to go at 8 tonight, I'm really sorry.
I'm trying to
So
push
there's
through
something-
quickly.
yeah. Mhm. Otherwise, I'm just gone, that's
Um,
for you.
John, did you have any other comments? You kind of heard what we've, okay. So, just to recap, I've got 4 panels, a name panel, one sponsor board, 1 committee board, and then a bulletin board. And then, it's in a square with a void in the middle with, a roof that's reminiscent of the, covered bridge.
Mhm.
And a ground surface that makes it easier in terms of not having to mow under it and whatever, so that it works for DPW. Whether it's the crushed stone like on the walking path or something like that.
All around it, like in an island, you want the crushed stone around the,
just don't want to have
Well-
grass growing up inside.
Yeah.
I think she's looking
Yeah.
at the grass on the post and saying, "Oh, that someone has to go weed whack that." I don't.
okay.
Well, I put it on there to mind.
So-
We don't
That's-
want that. That's what
More
happens.
So much for our
maintenance.
natural.
I'm just remembering Steve talking about getting the ride-on lawnmowers
No, that's
through
fair.
particular areas, and if we've got a cube there, that's not something that
It's hard.
they're gonna be able to ride a mower through, so.
We could just ask DPW what they would be
preferred.
happy to have there in terms of maintenance.
Yep,
Okay.
Wood chips, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
wood
not like
chips or
kids are gonna
something, yeah.
be playing with
DPW can decide. Okay.
What about the smaller sign inside for the natural area?
I like that a lot.
Me too.
Mhm.
Although I can't, what is on the smaller sign? I can't, can you zoom in at all, or is that
Not
possible?
really.
Okay.
Sorry. Well, I guess I could.
I mean the middle signs with the arc?
I mean, basically, it would be, the front would be, the name of the area and then a description of the different things that are in that natural play area. And the things that we've talked about were the sensory gardens and the animal track things where kids could touch and see the animal prints. Some sort of a butterfly garden, perennial garden kind of a thing. Potentially a pathway that might connect it all together, and then maybe lounging stones, like, that's a lot, but maybe, maybe like the one on the top that's kind of a carved sign that says, you know, Friendship Park, but most importantly, is somewhere that kids can kind of climb on or sit on or lay on or whatever, just sort of a natural, right?
Mhm.
And then the pile of rocks is just to show maybe a couple of those, not, obviously not all of those, but, right? And so the sign would sort of define those areas.
So are they gonna have a pile of rocks similar to that, is that what you're saying?
Maybe.
Smaller scale?
I mean, I don't know, it wouldn't be anything nearly that big, but I think that's something that we had talked about, they were gonna look into to see what the liability would be for having rocks in the playground. But it kind of works in the natural play area.
Might, I don't know, I wonder if he might track like snakes. They tend to like those kind of things.
That's fair.
We'll have to get through the zip crews and they'll be flying snakes. All right, so are we, we're all good with the signage plan?
Mhm.
So I'm sorry, just, so that's the playground sign, so does that mean there is going to be a second, maybe 4-panel square thing echoing that talks about Roberts Field? And the map and everything, coming down, down the road or something?
Maybe.
Maybe just a 2-panel, or?
Right, those
Yeah.
lower two ones, right?
Yeah.
Descriptions of the 3 areas, or, the other 2 areas on the map or something like that.
And
I think that's important information, yeah, I just
Yeah.
think maybe it could be located differently.
And I think our goal is to make sure that they all work together. So like you were saying, that whatever sign we put out in another area looks identical style-wise to what's in the playground.
So the only thing I think we lose with going to the 4-panel is we're not pushing people out, right? We're not
Not necess-
inviting
yeah.
them to explore.
Right. We could be with the bulletin board. We could put a temporary thing up that talks about the trails or whatever, but,
Okay. Yeah.
you know,
And since the rest of the playground's gonna be changing over the next field, since Roberts Field hopefully will be changing over the next 5-10 years, however long it takes for everything to happen,
Okay.
then if you have that in the movable spot, then you can keep
Right.
it going.
so, yeah, we're losing one of the sponsor boards off of the castle and the trees, but we're replacing that with the bulletin board. So that's basically the change off of the original.
And we're not losing one, we're just condensing 3 to 2.
Right.
But we're getting rid of the original map, or not?
We're gonna have the map in the bulletin space.
We'll tack it on. It'll be a printout
It's
on
gonna
a,
be ever changing, so that way we can change it over time.
I'm confused, that's okay.
there'll be a map somewhere else. There'll be a map somewhere else in the park in the welcome area. But for this particular playground signage, it'll just be specific to the playground. There will be a map on the smaller thing for the trails, right? Because that's the
Yeah.
scavenger hunt, so you'll have that. That'll still be driving people out. But you just won't have those 2 panels on the lower left-hand side on that sign. And they'll be in a square with a roof.
I mean, I like those panels, I think they'll be
Let's go
great
wall.
on the farther larger,
Yeah.
better
I agree.
thing.
Okay, good?
Mhm.
All right, so I will give Steve all this feedback, and then the approximate sizes and all that stuff, and then hopefully we can develop a budget for the playground signage. Do we want to include printing the smaller signs for the scavenger hunt that the dogs are walking by? I think we have sort of two already that the scouts have already built, and we could probably build those as part of a volunteer project down the road. Or we could go ahead and include the cost for them now and then make them look,
Let's get a cost estimate on them to see, you know, like if we can get them done, fine. If we say, well, it's not really in the plan now, budget-wise.
Right.
all right, so I should include the smaller signs in the budget?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
We
as a breakout item.
To see if it fits.
Yeah, as a breakout item.
As a
Okay.
breakout item, so you can
Perfect way of
bring
putting
it.
it.
In an ideal world, would you want the sign, the actual physical look of the sign to look like this that we're building, or are you okay with it looking like how it looks now, which is sort of,
A little more natural.
yeah, a little more natural? It's kind of got the
Mhm.
thing sitting on the pile with the thing that opens up.
Yeah, that's.
I think that's okay.
Either way is
that
fine.
works.
Mhm.
All right.
See, I think that with your describing that someone has already hit it with a rock and broken it to pieces, I'm thinking more about a park I know from New York where it was printed and then shellacked. So it's
Right.
printed on half a log on
Mhm.
poles, and then it's shellacked, and then it's permanent. So that doing something like this, it's pre-printed, will probably be about the same as having done that.
I think these will last, I think the PVC will last a lot longer,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
But
It's-
with the ones that fold, we can print something and then set them inside the box and then kind of close it. And then that way, if something changes and we want to update it, it's not a big cost to,
right.
that's kind of how we did the one over by the trailhead.
What about creating frames to put in this material? And the frame would have the logo for that section of the park, and anything, information that we know would be static.
I don't, where are these
I mean,
frames?
instead of there being signs, with just the flat sign, what if we had
A holding frame, you
a
said?
holding frame?
Is that where the dog's walking by?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what the Boy Scouts built. That's what the style is now for the Boy Scouts, so.
but I was thinking having it done out of the plastic that would have the logo, the Friendship Park logo, the area logo, and any other, information we want that, again, will not change over time. Like just a sign, nature path, or scavenger hunt, or,
Well, I think specifically what we're talking about is the playground part, right? And then the scavenger hunt signs. So, I guess the question is, do we, go with what we have now in place, that style, or do we do a different style?
do you want the logo in each of these places? I think that should be the deciding factor
But we can put the logo in,
on the
either
paper.
one. Well, it's not on paper, it's on Coroplast. It's on, it's
Okay.
printed on vinyl. Right?
Okay,
If you go to
I
the,
didn't realize that, okay.
yeah, if you go to the kiosk at the head of the trails at the park behind the fire station, there's that kiosk there and there's a hinge door there, which hasn't been broken.
That one's the
But there's a Coroplast printed sign that's been up for a couple of years, and it's faded in the thing, but it's like $40. It's low money to
Okay.
replace. And you can, I was gonna talk to John about updating that copy so that it matches
Okay.
everything once everything is done. So
Okay,
I think we can accomplish what you want to do.
okay.
Have you explored lamination? Can you just print it on low-cost stock and then laminate it?
Yeah, I don't know. I got a quote from a printer, and it was a 1/2-inch PVC that's the print is impregnated into the PVC, and I'm sure Steve will have somebody that he can talk to too. But at least that gives us a $8 per square foot cost. So it's an outdoor sturdy board that stands up to UV rays and all that stuff. So Any other comments or questions? No? Timeline, nothing's really changed here.
Actually, we're sorry, we came late and looks like you didn't update the playground design. But
Yeah.
just to go back to it, I have one question you may want to consider. I was actually looking over the weekend.
Can I give you just the quick update on what happened? So we were supposed to get an updated plan from Steve, who was
Right.
going to move the equipment, specifically the swings and stuff on the lower portion.
Right.
That didn't happen, and then that didn't happen today. So this is actually a design that was sent over by O'Brien and Sons to Steve, but hasn't yet incorporated his shifts yet. That's it.
Understand that,
Okay.
and when we saw it, we suspected as much, but as I was looking over the weekend, you may have a problem with the ball field.
Yeah.
Where you're locating it, the ball field's probably gonna have to move.
Yeah, that's already,
Because the dugout, but is it in your budget? Because you're gonna have to redo the ball field for youth baseball.
I think they're getting rid of that, I could be wrong, but I think Steve's been talking about the reason that this design is going in part when it is that baseball will be done for the season, and the next year they're not gonna, until they redo it, they won't be, I think they're down one field, right? Isn't that what the?
No, they're still at 2. They're definitely still at 2. There hasn't been any discussion
Then
about.
why has he been talking about the fact that it's gonna impact them and we're gonna put
Oh,
this in
because in
after?
terms of like the build and all the, everything won't interfere with a baseball game going on. You don't have people playing games at the field while we're trying to schedule our community build weekend. That's what that was my understanding.
I guess I'm wrong, but I
All wrong.
Yeah, and that's a sore spot with them, so it's definitely still at 2 fields. I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying that's my understanding.
I guess I'm wrong. That was what I thought he had meant when he said what he said, but I have nothing either way. It's just.
This is still within the maximum footprint that the earlier committee defined, and I agree.
But within the maximum footprint, I think you originally had to move the ball field for that.
My understanding is that this is the maximum footprint, and then we were expecting today to be able to see this design dropped into that master plan thing so that we could
Understand, got it.
sort of figured out how it all worked together. Because not only that, but on the upper side of it, you've got the lacrosse field, which is gonna fall above the word playground, and then you've got the walking path as well. So there's a lot going on there that really needs to be accounted for.
And also, I think the ball fields were being moved anyway, and this created some space. But I thought we had a little more room that,
But the ball fields still have to play the spring and summer in their current location, because those are not moved because the town fall meeting didn't fund it.
and I thought, since none of the playground goes further than the current fence line, is that correct?
No, it's not.
Oh,
It goes actually to the, I think the dugout fence is just about on the edge of where the,
okay, now I get it.
5 to 12 area is.
All right, and I'm really sorry to interrupt everybody. I do have to go. Before I go, I just want to pass this down for Bill for the Friends of Roberts Field. It was a drop-off.
Oh, I have stuff for you too.
And for everybody watching at home, if you didn't see before, we have some sample bricks from the playground. So I'm gonna give a quick sales pitch. This is the 4x8. This is the laser blasting. You can have 3 lines of text. They just came in hot off the press. And this is the 8x8. So if you're thinking about having a brick in the new pathway, please do. This is what you'll be getting. So I apologize.
Are you gonna leave those with me so I can take some pictures?
No, because I'm giving them to Heather tomorrow morning, so she has them for farmer's market.
Well, I'm gonna go to the farmer's market so I can give them to her then.
Okay.
And that's the contract with the senior center and
Wonderful.
something else. Oh, that's the O'Brien and Sons, stuff that I scanned, the community build stuff. And that
Okay.
stuff is posted online now.
Awesome, great. I will just leave these here. Sorry about that.
Does anybody want to volunteer to take notes? All right.
It's a fun job, I promise, guys. Take care. Sorry. Good night.
Good night. Did we answer that question?
I
It
don't
wasn't
think
a
so.
question, it was more of a comment, I think, yeah, just need to consider that.
So maybe just talk to Steve about it and.
Well, so I emailed the past plan and the timeline to both Chelmsford Youth Lacrosse and to Chelmsford Baseball. They didn't give me any feedback, but Steve at the last meeting said that he had spoken directly with Chelmsford Youth Baseball and that they were okay with everything. So, any other comments before we move on? Jumped ahead. So there's kind of a lot to update here. Daniil just talked about this. The Buy a Brick campaign is open now. We've talked about having an end date of April 30th, so we've got a limited amount of time to get sales in for that. The sales are available if anybody's at home wants to buy a brick. Highly encourage them to. You can go to friendsofrobertsfield.org, buy a brick, and click on the link there, and it'll bring you to our store where you can purchase either through PayPal, actually credit cards, and through a PayPal portal. You can use your credit card, or you can print it out and then pay with a check and mail it in. As of, actually this is updated, as of today, I think we've sold about 21 bricks, and most of those are the 4x8 bricks. So that gives you some idea. We have roughly about $1,500 in sales in total
That's awesome.
so far. Any questions about, the brick? So we have put up, John has been nice enough to help us, and very talented designer has created a telemedia slide. So we have a telemedia slide up for the brick campaign. We also have Daniil recorded a 30-second television spot for the brick campaign. And we'll see if I can play it. Guess not in
Hi, I'm Daniil Root, a member of the Roberts Field Advisory Committee. Please join us for our Friendship Park Playground Design public input session on Tuesday, February 27th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Chelmsford Senior Center, located at 75 Groton Road. The new inclusive Friendship Park Playground design will be presented, followed by a question and answer session with public input. This family-friendly event is suitable for all ages, with activities for kids, pizza, and sweets available too. Put the little ones in their jammies and join us for a fun night looking at the future of Friendship Park. Additional information can be found at robertsfield.org. We hope to see you there. Thanks.
All right, sorry, that was obviously for the public input session next Tuesday. But we do have a brick campaign, a brick spot that I need to finish editing as well. And we'll have that running this week. And we also have a telemedia slide to the left for the public input session. And then we also have our temporary signs up at Roberts Field, talking about what's coming soon, and then the two things, the volunteering for the community build and then selling bricks. We also have an update on the 1023 application for nonprofit status. We have a meeting scheduled on Friday with a lawyer and a CPA that will hopefully be the last meeting to have that application finalized, and then we'll submit it, and then it should take a minimum of 30 days to have it approved after that. I think that's it for the updates on that stuff. Do you guys have any questions about any of that?
No.
No? Grant writing. Adele, do you have anything you wanted to add about that?
It's been slow to start, but there is a quick deadline coming up on one that partners with Disney and a national organization for parks. They're focused, though, on what they call underserved communities. And the definition of an underserved community is either more than 50% people of color or more than 50% of residents at or below the poverty line,
So probably
which
not so
Chelmsford
much.
doesn't fit either one of those, given we're 92% white. And median family income is around 100,000. So we're nowhere near that. But they also do have a line where they say, we invite you to explain your definition of underserved. And under that, I was thinking about the mother from the CPAC who says, my daughter is now 21. And once she outgrew the baby swings, there was nothing in any of the playgrounds in Chelmsford that she could do. And that is an underserved community. And I think if we go at it from that direction, we can at least justify our asking for the grant. 8 of these grants will be awarded of about $30,000 each. And there are some requirements afterwards about taking quality surveys amongst the people who use the park after the build is completed. And so we're obligating ourselves to, more polling and in their design. But I think it would be an important opportunity that we shouldn't miss, even if it's just for practice getting the grant stuff out and getting our the equivalent of our elevator speech, but in a grant. But
Would the individual or someone like them be fully served right now by the plans for Friendship Park?
they would, I'm not sure about fully served, because if fully served would be if all the equipment was accessible and invited play by anyone with any abilities, and some of our equipment cannot, to address the needs of those kids who are really athletic and really need a physical challenge. And we can't ignore those needs as well.
So we need to be able
But-
to articulate what we've accomplished along those lines.
Right. But the other part of it is they're focusing on models that can be replicated around the country. And I think our process is one, in terms of community involvement, that's really been very solid, thanks to Bill and all the surveys and, all the information that we've accumulated, and then kept everything on the website and had good touch with the public in terms of social media and all of that. So I think that we fit their goals more than just the financial demographics or the color demographics.
So for next steps for that, are you,
It's something that a town department has to apply for. So I will forward it to Steve tomorrow and say, when can we meet to get this going?
would you be willing to maybe try to find the person? There's a person in the DPW, I think it's in an admin role, that kind of does a lot of this stuff. Could you
Okay.
maybe try to find out who that person is and maybe try to
Sure.
develop a working relationship with them to try to do some other stuff too? You know what I mean?
There may be some things they're aware of in terms of what's available from the state.
Right.
I know that the grant that we got for Varney Park is not available this year because they're targeting towns of populations smaller than 6,000.
Okay.
So what they're offering is not something we're eligible for at all. It may be, the following year's stuff is already out.
Right. Barry, you had a question?
No, it's just the amount of work to prepare that grant. We don't want to be dumping something on Steve if he doesn't have the time to do it. So that means.
Right.
I think that was what Bill was alluding to, either through you or somebody else here, that we
Well, I think in terms of a lot of our presentation stuff that's already online, that's, we can literally plug it into the grant as it is,
Okay.
which is very nice.
Yeah, I mean, so you'll reach out to them tomorrow and see what, if we can get something going.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Anything else for grants that you want to talk about?
Not at the moment.
Corporate sponsorships, Marcus?
Yeah, so I can talk you through this. So basically, I broke this down into three big key steps that we need to look at. So first thing we need to do is define what really the donation goals are that we're trying to accomplish, right? So I think, Bill, we talked about setting a goal, ancillary goal that we can need to agree on as a group. And then what are the sponsorship options, right? So Kelsey and the Trees did gold, silver, platinum. Do we want to do that same thing? So there's some options that we'll go through there. And then how are we going to get the word out? How are we going to prospect this? How are we going to make businesses aware of it? So networking, using the community to bring awareness to that. And then at the end, really, how are corporations going to donate, right? What's going to be the vehicle for which they contribute the funds? And so we're going to look at some different options there. So you have the next.
And so I should forward to you some of my grant lists, because some of them are set up as corporate donation as opposed to grants.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry,
Like there's something from Walmart.
computer's spazzing.
Okay. Which would be more of a direct donation versus going through a grant program?
I think so. I haven't looked at all of them.
Okay.
Marcus, I was just gonna comment while he's fighting with this. A lot of corporations already have a predefined process by which they support grants.
Mm-hmm. Right, so it's understanding what their
Hannah, if you
philanthropy
did
group
that,
is, yeah.
And you can actually go on to their website, and they a lot of times they'll outline their goals,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can say, well, is there an alignment here between what we're doing and what they're trying to fund, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
There was a very large corporation that was announced as moving in to take some of the space that Kronos is going to be leaving. DCU?
DCU is moving in on
Oh.
129.
Okay, I thought it was a health.
They may be moving
Insurance
in. Someone
program,
else
so.
might be moving in also,
Yeah, those are
but there's a
Big
new,
complex.
there's a lot of buildings over there that are empty, a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But I know DCU is currently moving in.
Well, I know that Enterprise Bank is very big on, community work, and they donated the initial money for the account that would cover all the application fees
Mm-hmm.
for the applying for a 503C status.
Let's get back on
Okay.
this, and then we can go into some specifics at the end of Marcus's presentation, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So for establishing the goals, this is what we kind of discussed originally, was a $50,000 goal for corporate sponsorships as a milestone. How we would get there is outlined in the different tiers of sponsorship options. So if we set up, a platinum to be about a $10,000 option, gold would be, $5,000, so 2 of those. Silver at $2,500, potentially getting 5 of those, and then bronze at a $500 donation, potentially getting 15 of those, and then equipment donations of about 10,000. That could be, again, one way to reach the $50,000 goal. Doesn't necessarily mean that this is how we have to reach it. It's just an example, right, of kind of breaking it down. And then looking into, as far as the recognition, I know we talked about the signs earlier, so we could probably put those all on one sign versus the 2. And then understanding, how are we going to recognize volunteers? Would that be the same way as well? Just kind of using signage. So I guess for here to move forward, I guess we'd have to agree on, is the 50,000 the right goal? Does everybody agree with, again, using the signage as the recognition for donations?
And the bronze, silver, gold, and platinum categories too, because that's something we haven't really talked about.
Correct. Yeah, that was actually on the next slide too, is
sorry.
breaking down the different package options and how people could be donating. But if you want, you can move to the next one. But yeah, this kind of talks about, again, for a general donation would be those different package levels, but then They can also donate playground equipment, which I know we're gonna be getting a list of the equipment options, which we'd wanna be able to present to the corporations as options, right? To say if you don't wanna do a platinum sponsorship or bronze, you can sponsor a specific piece of equipment instead. And then also, I know, there was some landscaping that could potentially be donated, picnic benches, that sort of thing. And then also, obviously, they could still buy the bricks, have their corporate name put on a brick, would be options as well. And then also volunteering for the community build, right? So we need corporate sponsorship for that. I think we don't need as many people as we originally thought, but we're still gonna need a lot of people. And so if an organization cannot donate funds, potentially they could donate people to help out with, the community build. And then if there are any other individuals who could help with possibly PR, advertising, making connections with other organizations that might be interested or able to help with some donations, that's always also helpful as well.
Is anything missing from here, you guys? I mean, this is basically our ask, right? This is
Right.
kind of what we're gonna go start
Exactly,
with. It's kind of our opening. Can you help us with any of these things?
right.
Is everybody comfortable with the platinum, gold, silver, and bronze levels of sponsorship, the dollar amounts and
Sure.
the way it's structured? David? No? No comments? You look like you want to say something.
If you have a recommendation, go ahead, yeah.
Listening.
Does anybody think that the goal is reasonable?
That's what I was thinking
Unreasonable?
about.
What are your thoughts?
I think the goal is reasonable. If we can get more, cool. If we can't, that would be unfortunate, but I think the goal is reasonable. I think just because we have as a goal doesn't mean we should. I assume when you have the one platinum in there, I assume we're not gonna be like, well, we got a platinum, so. we don't have to.
No, it's just, that's again, assuming,
Right.
just working the math out as to how we get to the goal, right?
There's probably, like 3 handfuls of companies that might be the platinum.
Maybe.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe
So
a handful.
it's limited.
Yeah, we did some research to kind of look and see what businesses were in the area and employee size and, revenue wise, how big they were, and that would wanna or be able to sponsor at that type of a level. And it's it's limited. There's not a whole lot.
You have Sycamore on there?
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
I think an area that'll probably, I'm optimistic that we'll see a little bit better in is the equipment category. I think that we'll probably sell hopefully more than that, because the $10,000 is almost one nice piece of equipment. And I think we're gonna have sort of, between like the zip crews and all the specific kinds of inclusive things that we have in the playground, I think there's gonna be an opportunity to really sell those things,
Here's a question. If you bought 5 8x8 bricks, are you a bronze?
That's a good question.
So we talked about that, right? And the challenge there is the cost of the bricks,
Right.
right? And so once you factor in that, I think the bricks would cost around $200, so now your donation is really $300.
The bricks cost.
The bricks, we incur costs on the bricks.
Right. No, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just surprised that it's $200 on 4.
Well, it's 36 for the 4x8s. For the 4x8s, it's $18.30, and then the 8x8s are $36.20. So it's roughly 40ish.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this, and I'm kind of the feeling that we keep the bricks separate. That we just keep the categories of as like I want to write a check.
Right. Because I think a company would probably not buy 5 bricks. They may do a bronze sponsorship plus 1 big brick.
Right. I guess I'm thinking bronze is of a level that you might get families, not just corporate.
Yes.
Like if you're doing
Sure,
corporate, I
sure.
would have done bronze as 1,000 only, but bronze at 500, I could see that being more attainable for families who want to or are willing. 500 is in a realm of more
Yeah, for the
reasonable.
bronze, I was thinking small business. That's really what I was going for, right? Small local businesses, which,
Mhm.
a lot of those don't generate more than $100,000 a year, right? So you could do 1,000, but
Yeah, you could really cut yourself out of.
I think you could cut yourself out. I think the bronze is about volume, right? It's a
We got a
transaction.
really good list from the town clerk's office today of people who have filed for business licenses, and it's about 60 to 70 names. and it's all the, landscape companies and hair salon, you know what I mean? It's like all the bread and butter businesses of Chelmsford, so I think that's where the bronze,
You know, that makes sense.
so.
Yeah, I mean, for $600, they could get their name on the recognition board, and they could get a brick, right, with their business name on it, right?
Right.
So
But are we in agreement that we wanna keep the brick separate from this and just treat these categories as a write and a check? Because if I'm, whoever, and buy a zip cruise, I'm gonna spend $20,000, so do I get my name in the platinum too? Or do I just get my name on the equipment?
just on I would say the equipment, yeah, because again, that's two separate spots on the recognition, right? And then the platinum is you're writing a check, and there's only so much equipment that we have, right? So that was another thing we discussed, is making sure that we had the equipment list so that we could show people, okay, well, there may be some people that want to sponsor certain pieces of equipment. Maybe the accessible equipment is more attractive to a company to sponsor for whatever reason, right? Versus a slide. And so we want to make sure that we have the list available so that if as they get purchased for us, right, or sponsored, we can kind of almost check it off and say, oh, this isn't available anymore. We only have 3 of these, again, creating that, sense of urgency if they really want to sponsor that equipment.
So Marcus, does this, would this encompass a situation where somebody comes along and says, I really, really wish you guys had this piece of equipment and it's not part of your plan, and I'll buy it for you. It's a $20,000 gizmo that does whatever. I don't know, maybe you deal with that when we come to it.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody came to us with that, we'd have to change the plan
the
design, which would be
design.
maybe a little challenging, but hey, if someone's gonna give us $20,000 for a piece of equipment and we can find a place for it, then that's a good problem to have.
Someone out there is
So,
watching is like, I want to buy you that slide.
Yeah, that's a good problem to have, so, I mean.
It's unlikely that they're going to be involved soon enough
Well, that's a great
be
example,
in the
though.
design.
The slide, right, is that something how soon, or I mean, going up to the build, right, how soon we would have to make a decision on, okay, we want the roller slide versus, if we wanted to change it out, because someone said, hey, I'll give you the $10,000, so that we have the actual natural looking slide versus the roller slide.
Yeah, that would change. I mean, we couldn't do that without changing the whole plan because of the 48 inches and the 56. You'd have
So
to work.
those-
You'd have to mess with
Yeah.
decks and the whole structure of the design. I mean,
So,
I think
so
it's
just to
not
be
a-
upfront, I think we would have to have that kind of an offer and decision before March 9th.
right. And I just
Okay.
don't
Before the
see that's
playground
happening in the
design
next
is
2
finalized,
weeks.
right?
3
Because the
weeks.
equipment's getting ordered the next week, so the window is tight.
So to answer your question, it probably kind of is what it is after March 9th. So whatever equipment we have to.
That makes sense.
Although we're missing sensory equipment, musical kind of stuff that are stand-alone things that need maybe a 4x4 space.
They
could be
actually
That could
talked
be-
about adding panels in at the last meeting, so they added I think that the plan was to add a rain panel that kind of made noise, and then another panel too. I don't know if it was or not, but that was at least discussed.
Okay.
Yeah, but none of them were. Yes, but in terms of a standalone, in theory, we could probably, if someone really wanted to, we could probably add a standalone sensory area easier. If someone out there is watching is like, I know, in 4 weeks I'm gonna kind of be like, I really wanted you to have a sensory area that you don't have. That's probably something we could find a way to build into the
Yeah.
thing.
And I think the natural area has the opportunity to have that, because you've
Right.
got we can do for low money, we can do a stamped
Right.
foot imprint kind of a thing, and it doesn't necessarily have to be flat, it could be upright too, so.
So yeah, I think just working out with O'Brien's and Sons, what is the equipment we're definitely going to use, and then what is the extra equipment that maybe we could have someone want to sponsor?
Exactly.
Just provide some
Yeah.
options, right?
They might even provide a list,
Mhm.
Del said, musical or tactile.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So sort of the key things that I think we need to agree on tonight are that we are comfortable with the categories, platinum, gold, silver, and bronze. We're comfortable with the dollar amounts for each category. I also think it's important that we agree that the recognition for donations is going to be on the signs and not necessarily
On a
scattered
particular
throughout the
swing.
the
Yeah.
equipment.
Right.
I like that. It's a I mean, otherwise, unless you want to do a scavenger hunt with find the donation name on the equipment, I like the idea of having it all up front. I have a quick question. The equipment, 10,000, what is is that only if you pay $10,000 then you get to buy a piece of equipment? Or is that you're hoping to get up to $10,000 worth of equipment donations?
Correct, yeah.
And this was just to get to the $50,000.
It's not to say this is exactly how.
And that's
Okay,
something
I-
I want to
This is
ask
just
about when the other discussion is done.
Go ahead, go ahead.
When we were going for the town approval, and there were comments about our not having come into the process with more funds raised. What did it seem like people were expecting in terms of percentages or such?
All of it.
Yeah,
They wanted
just
all of
they
it.
wanted us to show up with a bunch
They
of
wanted
money.
us to turn around and go home and
Yeah.
not use the funds. That was the.
Okay.
I mean, we'd been in existence as this committee for all of 2 weeks, I think, before that town meeting, and they kind of were like, why didn't you guys show up with money? And we're like, we just all met each other. Like,
So these numbers are conservative for a couple reasons. One, our time.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of time to raise the money. We
Right.
don't have a year, right? We have a couple months. And then the other thing is the setup of the, what is it, the 40C3, right?
501c3.
501c3, sorry, is not complete yet. And
Right.
so, I mean, hopefully it'll be done soon, but as that delays, that shortens the window in which we can actually capture corporate donations. So.
or any fundraising opportunities, which is, you know.
Well, we can
it's
still
just-
raise funds, it's just gonna be a lot harder because people won't be able to claim it on their taxes, and corporations specifically are not gonna give us $10,000 for something they can't write off on their taxes.
Right.
It's just the way it
It's
is.
just
Yeah.
hard because of how things shook out with the 501c3 and not being able to go through the town. It's just the way it is. But
Yeah.
yeah, because I was talking to someone, as I said, I talked to a couple people down at the park today. I was trying to explain how, you know, people had wanted us to come with donations or, you know, fundraising already. And the reason that I believe we got the vote that we got was that they were tearing it down one way or another this fall. And it was, if we had years to fundraise, we would have fundraised for years to try to build the park, but basically, there was no way we were gonna fundraise and design a park for the whole amount. There was just, it was a timing issue.
Right.
And that's the town, and people of the town were understanding enough to give us.
So if we can get the 501c3 earlier than planned, maybe this goes higher, right? I don't know, it's just, this is a very rough estimate right now.
Well, I'm just thinking that most grants have a matching dollar requirement.
Well, we have the money, so
Right.
if somebody has the matching thing, we're set, because
Okay.
we've got up to 450
Okay.
already
Yeah.
to pay for it, you know? Originally, we set the goals when we were working on the 1023 form,
Mhm.
and originally the fundraising goal was, I think it was 150 or something like that, but then we started digging down into it and kind of realizing that's gonna be a tough nut to crack. We got to the 50. And the same thing with grants. We have a $25,000 goal for grants, which,
Mhm.
you know, maybe too ambitious, but at least it's a number, you know?
Right.
So,
I'm thinking that there's nothing that says we cannot fundraise in retrospect. I mean, there is no better selling point than saying to a corporation, come on down, you know, let's meet for coffee at the park. And, you know, this is designed to do this for the kids. This includes these kids and that kids and whatever. And, no, we don't have anyone listed as sponsoring that.
Yeah, but most people are gonna be like, you already have it built, why do you,
It's
why are
gonna
you
be
looking for
really
my money?
difficult. And now I could see us bringing somebody down to the park to say, hey, here's where we wanna put this.
Right.
Do you wanna donate to do that? Then I could see that, but, I mean, it's worth a shot, but I wouldn't.
Is there any reason we can't go and, the word hustle keeps on coming to mind, but it doesn't sound very good, but go hustle for money at this point, saying we expect to be a 501c3, we wouldn't expect you to cut a check until we got that, but we expect to, we have the paperwork in and we start now and we go, hey,
Well, actually,
Absolutely.
if you wanna go to the next
That's
slide,
the
that
plan.
actually goes to step 2.
but before we move
So-
on, let's, but we all agree
put it on
that,
there.
So we're all in agreement that the categories are good, the dollar numbers for each category are good, and then the way that we're gonna recognize people is good, right?
That works for me.
Agreed.
I have just a quick question. I hope you meet the fundraising goal. If you do, is the intention to add it to the 450 or return that amount to the town?
So the way it's gonna work, the committee itself can't raise money, so the money's gonna actually be raised by the Friends of Roberts Field, right?
Okay.
So the way it'll work is that we will, let's take equipment, for example. If somebody says, I wanna buy a swing, we'll have a contract with them to buy the swing. They'll pay us the money. We'll give the money to the town with the intent of that money going towards that particular swing. Then the town will give us a document back saying it paid for that. So that $10,000 in, or whatever it is, in our mind, should lessen the amount of the draw on the CPC funds. So it should be returned, but ultimately it's going to be up to the town to decide if it gets returned or not.
Okay. And is the same true for the bricks?
The bricks are a little different because we didn't actually budget for the pathway. We didn't budget for a pathway in the original fund, so it's sort of out of the thing. The goal with the bricks is to be able to pay for the pathway from the upper parking lot to connect to the playground first, right? And I think that cost is about $18,000 for that brick pathway.
Right.
If we can raise more than that, then we'll try to pay for some of the pathway that's inside the design of the playground to turn that, what Steve is looking at, either concrete or crusher fines, to turn some of that into it. So we'll take some of that money out of it. Again, it's gonna be up to the town to decide with that portion if it gets returned back to the town. But I from the Friends of Roberts Field standpoint, our goal is to not increase the spend, but to pay down the CPC funds, which would be sort of the sales point for your after the fact thing to go back and say that you're actually giving back to the community, giving this money back to CBC, but it's still kind of a hard sell.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Complete.
Okay.
And then one other question. There's some very large corporations in town, Lockheed Martin for one. Do you think 10,000 is too low for some of those larger corporations? Just a thought.
Yeah, it's
Gusto.
yeah, it's definitely. I mean, I did some research online to kind of see what typical options were like this, and this is pretty much what most is standard from what I've seen. But it's not to say they couldn't go higher, right? I mean, a
Or
platinum,
buy equipment and be a platinum
right? They
member.
could be a platinum member and buy equipment, or yeah, it's definitely not a limit to say
Then they
okay,
get to be
platinum.
on 2
We're not going to take more
plaques.
than 10 grand. Platinum is actually I had on here 10 plus, like
Right.
anything over $10,000, you'd be platinum.
Because if you ask for 10,000, you get 10,000. Like you said, would you like to donate?
Would you like to buy a slide and pay us $10,000?
Right. And so, well, and actually later on we'll get into, really, the how we're going to network out and what we're going to ask individuals to do to help us with this endeavor, which we'll talk a little bit about that. So,
Got it. Thank you.
but that's a great point. Yeah.
The nice thing about this structure too is when you're asking for grant money, if you could say, well, if I don't ask for a certain amount, I won't get it, okay? But the flip side of that is if you ask for an amount that's too much, they may just say, no, you're being greedy and shut shop, so you've gotta balance that. And this gives a mechanism for doing that. You can say, we'd love to have you be a platinum donor, but if you can.
Yeah,
donate
we'll
more
take
than
50
10.
bucks for a brick, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So we've got the whole
Right.
gamut there. Okay, I think that's all we had to.
So
Gotta confirm on
yeah, you can move on to the next one. Okay, so this really talks more about getting out there and doing the work, right? So kind of what you're talking about. So there's a couple different things from a prospecting perspective. When do we start and end this, right? So you kind of brought up the point of, do we go out now and start talking about it with the promise of, hey, eventually we're going to be getting our
501c3.
501c3, thank you. I'd love to be able to have a date with that to say, hey, we're shooting for it by this date, but yes, we can absolutely start doing that and have those conversations.
Bill, you said that you expect it to be filed in the next week or two?
I expect the application to be finalized on Friday, and I would hope that we would file it Friday if I could. I don't know how it has to. I don't have to deliver in a horse and buggy or what, I don't know how it works, so. But soon, right? But I don't think that should drive it, because that's gonna be an unknown for at least 30 days.
Right, but I think if you can tell people, we have filed to be 501c3,
Yes.
Right.
then we can, I think that is
Right.
not all we need, but I think in terms of feeling legitimate enough to go and be like, hey, give us some money, we will be a 501c3, we have the paperwork in,
Right.
it's filed.
We're not gonna have the, that worksheet of, equipment until March 9th. That's when the town manager's gonna approve it, so,
But we know now, I mean, we'll know certain things that are almost 100% going to be on,
Right.
like some of the big things.
right.
We know we'll have a swing set.
Yeah, but I think once we have that final design, then that's really our, I think, in my mind, that's our marching date.
Mhm.
That's the date then we start rolling stuff out, because that's when everything's real.
Yeah, I don't think we want to wait that long personally, but I mean,
We can still move forward with the brick and then the regular sponsorships, and then when it comes to the equipment, if we don't have a list, then we can, if someone's interested in doing equipment, then that kind of goes on our, okay, when we get the list, we'll get back to you.
I can imagine, like, maybe I'm wrong. I'm guessing the loft is going to be the little kids thing. The loft. We're probably likely to have that and say, we know the loft is on there. I think the zip line, we know that the zip line's going to be on there, barring something shocking. So I think there's some things that we can probably.
Yeah, I think at least in my mind, the goal is to kind of have all the pieces of this ready to go, and because basically what it's going to, and Marcus is going to go through this, but I'm just looking at the calendar. It's going to be basically an email campaign to a bunch of people, and then it's going to require a bunch of follow-up phone calls.
You start the conversation with what you have now, saying we'll be coming up with a list after X date of, possible equipment things, and it gives us an excuse to ping back without being just pinging for no reason. We say, hey, we're looking for money now. Hey, and guess what? In a few weeks, we'll have a design that's been finalized, and then we'll be able to give you specific things so you can start thinking about it now. And, if you've always wanted to buy a slide,
So
now is your chance.
the public input session is the 27th, and then March 9th is the Friday on the following week. So what if we tried to launch on the after the 27th by starting to send emails and stuff?
What are the emails you're trying to, what are the emails you're sending? You're
So-
talking about sending emails to people to help?
A couple of things.
Draft.
One is again, getting the direct lists of corporations and HR departments and philanthropy departments, right? And reaching out to them directly. That's one aspect we could do. Also, what I found to be more successful is if we can actually get, champions within those organizations to do it for us, right? So individuals who live within the community, but maybe work at, Kronos or Lockheed, right? Who are willing to go into their, corporation and help sponsor us in there by, sharing the information that we provide around what sponsorship options are available. And if they're not comfortable with continuing through that whole process, but the corporation is interested, then bring us involved, and we can go and have those conversations or share information, whatever. But at least championing us into the organization.
So your target lists of both the corporations and individuals
Correct.
that can help, okay.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing on your list that I do think is missing, because a lot of these corporations have websites that you can actually go to that
Mm-hmm.
talks about their whole policy of grant gifting. And it seems like you need to think about an alignment between what Robertsfield represents in terms of what they like to give gifts for and what their gift targets are. So for example, ADA or all-inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
That may be a goal. Certain corporations have certain charitable goals that they drive for. I know that's
Mhm.
true with Hannaford and some of the other food shops.
Yes.
So somewhere, I'm not sure how that all fits together, but somewhere I think there needs to be some research and administrative work to figure out, okay, what does Robertsfield represent that would make these corporations want to make a contribution?
Mm-hmm.
And conversely, what are they looking for to promote, because
Mhm.
their
And have their
promotion-
names attached to.
What's that?
And have their names attached to.
Yeah, yeah, you relate the two, so.
Right.
So what if we started, at the public input session? What if we launched this
I think
fundraising
That would be a
campaign
good idea.
on the 27th,
Yeah.
right?
You might have networking potential within that crowd of people who work at
Right.
companies that could go
Right.
champion for us.
And we'll create a list of, we can create, a flyer and a stand-up card that basically lists all the things that we're looking for. This, right?
Mhm. And then, I think we can also do is create some sort of, kind of a value proposition around exactly, why sponsor the park, right?
Right.
Again, talk about the inclusivity like you're
Exactly.
mentioning,
Yes.
the benefits that the park is gonna bring to the community. There's also the involvement within the employer's, employees, right? So from a volunteer perspective, right, we're gonna be asking corporations to volunteer their employees, which can be a big, team building, morale booster type of an event that we can, that they can be a part of. So there's a lot of different benefits to the organizations to sponsor.
See if any organizations are into sponsoring nature-related
Right. Nature.
Things.
Mhm.
Nature,
nature
Yeah,
things
sure,
that
yeah.
attach to
And
the,
environmental,
yeah.
environmental preservation, all that, yep.
yeah.
So I think, I can work on putting that together so that we have it ready for the input session.
Yes, so we'll need some kind of a counter card, flyers to take, and then a sign-up sheet for people to sign up if they want to be contacted to help,
Mhm.
right? Okay.
Should have a fundraising packet that includes a copy of the presentation that we're making, all the slides.
Mhm. And by then, we'll have the final design of the park.
I don't,
Right.
where are you going with that? No, we won't have a final.
Oh, we won't.
Well,
The input section?
Theoretically.
Well, theoretically, yeah. I mean, something we could leverage, right, from a
We
visual
can,
perspective.
we can send people something to link to something that will exist.
yeah, we can
Right.
do
Well, we
that.
t-
And
yeah.
then every time it gets updated, we can, much with, give us your email and we will ping you with this particular fundraising information. And as it gets updated, we will ping you more.
But
Yeah.
it should also include things like, all the different information available on the website. Who is the contact person for our committee?
Okay.
Um,
Do you envision
Our
that being
general
being a
goals. and,
website page, like a web page? Kind of with a link to it? That way we can update it?
I was
Yeah.
thinking of it more being a paper something, because as much as a whole bunch of people are web-oriented, there are also some people within who are still concrete whole thinkers who have
We can,
trouble
well,
with.
we can do flyers. I mean, we can put out flyers that have the contact information and a webpage. No matter how concrete you are, if we put out flyers with our contact information, a web page on it,
Mhm.
some basic information, but really, because things are changing so much, we don't want to hand out a packet now that's, and have people think that unless
This
you're
is
like,
all there is,
here,
yeah.
Right.
give us, this is the information you need to give us
Right.
$10,000.
No, I'm building a packet, like a paper packet is, again, it's time consuming, it's
Yeah.
expensive, we're wasting paper. So
Okay.
I'd like to keep everything as digital as possible. And if
Okay.
we're gonna go meet with a large corporation and we need to bring in a packet, then we can print the
Right.
packet.
It's not only that,
It's,
the larger corporations provide the packet. All you do is
Yeah.
go online
Yeah.
and you fill it out with the
Right.
information.
And we don't
Exactly.
have our 501c3
Yep.
so we
number
can't
yet,
fill
which is
anything
what
out.
most,
Right, so I
exactly.
think this is, again, this is more in my vision is getting the word out, getting corporations, finding out who's interested, right? So when we do get the 501c3, we can actually take their money. And then, later on, we can talk about the contract vehicle that we're actually gonna do this with. So how are we gonna actually receive the funds, right?
Can we just,
Right.
can we just circle back real quick? So for the public input session, the idea is that we'll start with a webpage that has sort of our story and then
Yes.
how people can help and get
Mhm.
that going. And then
Mhm.
take a version of that and turn that into a flyer and then a counter card, and then we'll have a sign-up sheet too. Is that all the?
I would say, and then
materials that we
also something that we can share on social media. So if you have a link on the website where you can just share the link on social media, I think that'd be helpful.
need? Definitely do that, okay.
Let's see, what else did we talk about? I think you had mentioned to me about the town selectmen potentially,
Here we go.
helping out with that. making some phone calls.
So I reached out to the selectmen to ask them if they would, the idea being that we would send out an email and then they would maybe follow up with, the top 10% of the list that we want, those big companies. Because, I mean, having a selectman call you is going to carry more weight than having,
The advisory board for a
Right,
playground.
right. So
We're important people.
I've heard back from one so far, and then she was real agreeable to it. So I'll keep working on the others.
Yeah. Plus, they may know people that work at companies, so again,
Right.
from the
Yeah.
networking perspective, it would really help.
But I think we should individually try to think of people that would be good at that kind of thing. And if we know people, go ahead and start asking them and trying to get them to,
Yeah.
because we're going to have a list of probably 500 to 1,000 companies, I guess, roughly.
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah,
Are we
somewhere.
sticking with companies that are in town?
In the general vicinity, so I was thinking Chelmsford, Billerica, Tingsboro,
Lowell.
Westford, Lowell, yeah, because
Because I'm
people
like,
are gonna
I'm thinking
live here,
like
but-
Target does
yeah.
volunteer stuff. They're not technically in Chelmsford, but
Yeah.
everyone from Chelmsford goes to Target, so.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So, and we'll need to prioritize that list and then kind of chunk it up. And, like you were saying, that it's not going to take just one phone call to get somebody to close.
So,
The goal of the phone call is going to be to either close on a donation or to set a meeting. And it's going to take 7 phone calls to make that happen. So it's going to be time intensive, and we're going to need as much help as we can get making those calls. And so we're going to have to keep that database in a
Publicly shareable
shareable, password protected
Google
place
document.
that people can kind of update and stuff. So
I made this contact at X company and they said, X, please respond by
right, and
someone follows
have to
up.
kind of, so it's gonna be tough, but I mean, as many people as we can get to help us make those phone calls, I think the better we'll be served. I know we'll be better served. So.
yeah, and as long as as far as from the email and the phone, as long as it's individual, we shouldn't have any issues with like spam or anything like that, because we're not spamming.
So this was the different ways that you saw it sort of working, right?
Yeah, so essentially, we would, if we could take the email list and split them up between volunteers to help us out with that, those target lists are gonna be broken up by typically employee size. That's probably the easiest way that I can see us doing it, is looking at, if we get 1,000 company list, we would break it out by the top 25, and those will be approachable from a different perspective, maybe more the networking.
Employees, you said?
Employee size,
You're not
right?
looking
So,
at financial size?
well, that's much harder information to get, because if they're private companies, it's not gonna be
Oh.
public information. So, but employee size is pretty public information. It's easy to get. It's, sensitive information. So I can get that, and the larger amount of employees a corporation has, typically the more revenue they have. So it's kind of correlates. So chunking it out that way is definitely going to help. And then really one of the things I was going to actually ask about was who did this in Littleton, right? When they put this all together. So why reinvent the wheel? This is something that I think we're all, uncharted waters here for us. And so I want to reach out to them and find out if there's anything that they're doing that we are missing.
Bill, can you go back to the slides, Castle and Tree slide? I think they had a coordinator on their slide and their signage. I don't know if you can exit out of it so we can zoom in and look at I think one of the committee people is listed as the,
Sponsor coordinator or something like that?
Yes.
Or
Like-
fundraising chair.
I feel like I can almost read it at the bottom of that last slide, but.
Marcus, did you say you did reach out to people at Castle in the Clouds?
I have not yet. No, that's something that we need to.
The other thing I was going to ask you, have you looked at some of the websites on the companies that build playgrounds,
Mhm.
like O'Brien? They tend to have links to or be connected with fundraising, because anybody building a playground tends to have this problem.
Same thing, right?
And I did, a long time ago, I did go out and I just looked, and what I found was there's quite a bit of information. And they tend to give you some pretty practical guidance in terms of how to approach certain things and
Mm-hmm.
what to do, what not to do and stuff. And it's something, I mean, you just spend a few minutes, but you might want to just put that in the back of your mind and do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll check out those. I mean, I did look at a couple different websites for this process, and a lot of people, recommended that. you have a better chance of getting people to do sponsorships if it's personal, right? So if you have, again, someone working within the organization, that kind of, that's why that the whole champion process versus, I mean, we can make cold calls and send emails all day long, and we're gonna do that, but I think we'll still have more luck, especially with the larger corporations, if we can get people who actually work there to help us with the sponsorships.
As opposed to just
Okay.
filling out a webpage.
Exactly, yeah, we can fill out a webpage and maybe they'll agree or not, but I think we have a better shot if we get somebody to help us.
The chair
Yes.
of fundraising is David McManus.
Oh, okay. Good. There we go.
What does the bottom one say? Not the the one right above that.
Special needs
Ah,
coordinator.
never mind.
All right. Well, I will
I
reach
saw
out.
it said SP. I
Try to
thought
get
maybe
David's
that was
contact
sponsor or
information and reach
something.
out to him.
I think.
I said I'll try to get
Danielle
David's
has-
contact information and reach out to him.
I think Danielle has, I think she worked on that, maybe? I'm not sure.
Yes.
Maybe I'll check
She
with
might be
her.
able to. Okay.
Well, there's the front panel. The first panel has contact information on it and a website. See.
So, let's get back on,
Okay.
on, track here. Did you get through, your discussion about this slide?
Yes, I think so. We're pretty good there. Yeah. All right. So then this is the last piece of the puzzle. So once we've created the options and we've communicated this out, the last thing we need to do is figure out how we're gonna take in the funds, right? And so there's a couple different crowdsourcing options. There's GoFundMe, there's youcaring.com. Those are probably the two preferable ones because they carry a 0 platform fee. They all have a credit card transaction fee, and then there were some other ones that did have a platform fee. I prefer GoFundMe just because I think it's a well-known brand for what we're trying to accomplish, and it's an easy site to use. It's mobile ready, so it's something we could leverage. It could definitely be used by corporations, or it could be used by the public. If somebody wanted to go in and just donate, they can just donate with their credit card right there. Okay.
So we don't. I mean, is there just doing a check to the bank account?
That's an option too, yeah.
That's another option, right? So then for the that's why we're for the large sponsorships, if, obviously if we don't want to go through a GoFundMe page and they wanted to actually cut a check out or sign some sort of an agreement type contract, like, hey, so that they could get the tax credit, that's what we need to figure out from the lawyer, like, what does that look like?
I would say not just the large corporations. I mean, the last day to play, I had at least one guy who wanted to write us a check right there. And there are going to be some portion of the community who would rather just give you a check than go online and.
Which we can take, we're just trying to make it.
We can just take, for regular donations, we can take a check, it's fine, but typically if it's gonna be a corporate, like $5,000 and they're writing us a corporate check, they're gonna wanna have us either fill out their paperwork or have our own paperwork.
And also the photo op. Some of them may want to do the big check and, picture in front of the signs or whatever for
Like a
publicity.
big giant check, you mean? If they wanna buy the big check, then
We can, we can work something out.
if they really want to, then that's cool, yeah.
I do you expect, this is not coming across right, but
Go ahead.
do you expect corporations to want to go to GoFundMe to do it?
I think a small business who wants to donate $500, sure,
Okay.
yeah.
I think it's probably gonna be a lot of just individuals too, they're just kinda comfortable with that
Right. I
quarterly.
guess that's what I see. I see individuals more on a GoFundMe than a corporate.
But on GoFundMe, don't we have to offer something that they get something along with their
No,
donation?
that's like
No.
Indigo or not
Yeah.
Indigo, like other Kickstarter.
Okay.
And there's even some platforms where you have to set a goal, and if you don't get the goal, then the money goes back to the people who are gonna donate it, so.
Right.
But,
We don't wanna do
GoFundMe's
that.
not like that.
Okay.
Whatever you raise, you keep.
Yeah. And then we talked about the webpage, right? So I think that's definitely something we need to put together so that there's information about what the donation options are. We have links to, the GoFundMe page or, or the brick page, however anybody's gonna be able to donate. And then there's also the link to sign up for volunteer work. And then also showing people what the goals are and then what's our goal to date and really showing the equipment that's available for sponsorship as well. And if something gets purchased, then we need to show that there's one less available of that. Really going to show the progress.
Any questions?
Just so that we know that the link isn't for actual singing up for volunteer work, but rather signing up.
No, singing is important.
I saw that too, and I went,
You're gonna cut me that kind of slack for one typo.
Okay.
My goodness.
yeah, there's, yeah.
Wow.
Well,
Okay.
just because there are some of us that you really don't want to listen to our singing.
Any comments?
You're only allowed to
gentlemen?
volunteer for this park
It's
if you
sort of
have choir
aligns
background.
with this. We had a separate conversation about maybe doing a tweak of the website.
Mhm.
So just so I'm clear, like, the one you said you could hook me up with, what was the Friends site, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what I was looking, researching some website templates that actually were pretty much purpose-built for philanthropic,
Oh.
reasons. So that's one thing I thought was maybe lacking in today's website, was a way for someone to just easily donate,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so maybe some of the work I'm doing on that end might cover that last bullet point or help with that last bullet
Absolutely,
point.
yeah. Yeah, because one of the things
Rather than
that-
have a separate, I don't know,
we
donation
need-
website versus Friends site, can it all be a?
I think it's all one.
yeah. Because we were
Just
thinking
tab off
this
of
could
that site.
stay even after, right? Even after Friendship Park's
Right.
built, it could be part of the Friends of Roberts Field donation page if people wanted to donate to Friends of Roberts Field, right?
As long as we go into it knowing that the donation page is gonna be specific to the playground. So all the funds and all the money that we're gonna
Yes.
raise right now is only for the playground.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
But we're going to have to deal with the sports fields in another year.
Down the
and-
road.
Down the
Right.
road,
Yep.
yes.
Right, so it's good to plan for, but we need to make
Mhm.
sure that people understand that this is only for the playground.
Right. Mhm.
Do you think it's worth it for us to sign up with Amazon as one of their charities? Can't do it till we've got the 503C number.
How does that work?
Once you register, they'll give you access to the Amazon tag that goes on the website. That's the picture of the Amazon logo that will be a link up to Amazon, and then anybody can press that or register their charity as us, and a portion of all their purchases. I think it's 1 or 2%.
Basically, if you go to Amazon and buy stuff on Amazon from that link, then a portion of everything that you bought during that goes
Gotcha.
to,
Mhm.
to.
I definitely think we should do it.
Yeah,
if
that's
we
a great
can.
idea,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can I ask a really stupid question that keeps confusing me about our website? So there's friendsofrobertsfield.org, but then there's also robertsfield.org?
Friends of Roberts Field is Friends of Roberts Field. Robertsfield.org is this committee's website.
Okay,
So anything that we cover off on in this committee is posted on the robertsfield.org,
okay.
whereas only the stuff that the Friends of Roberts Field deal with, which is basically fundraising and stuff, and volunteer stuff, is at the Friends of Roberts Field. So it's kind of a separation.
Okay. The problem is every time I try to go to like Robertsfield, like one or the other comes up on my web, depending on what I was looking at last. So I keep on forgetting that they're two separate.
So that begs the question, where does the breakoff point come between the work that you guys are doing versus the Friends? When it comes to
Money.
fundraising?
Town can't raise money, so the committee can't be involved in raising money. So the Friends of Roberts Field is the money-raising arm of this whole project.
So this whole conversation that we're having is basically,
You're not raising money, you're just
we're
developing.
talking about how the Friends of Robertsfield will do this.
Correct. So Marcus is gonna have to be a member of the Friends of Roberts Field.
Okay.
Which means that any receipts or whatever that we give out need to have that name,
Mhm.
and then fundraising for.
Right.
Come on, don't you want to be our friend?
Any other questions on this? So, quick update, the volunteer stuff, nothing's really changed. We haven't really gotten any new members for our email list, no new members for Facebook. Actually, we got one yesterday. And we haven't, well, we'll have 30 now completed forms. I didn't bring any, but I'm gonna make you fill one. I do wanna say one thing real quick. I scanned the My Dream Playground drawings in, so those are posted now, and they're posted at our on the information for our public input session. So you can click on that link and you'll find a PDF of all, there's like 40 some odd drawings. And then as I was coming in this afternoon, this evening, I checked the mailbox that we have set up here, and I got up this packet, right? And it's from a 4th grade teacher at South Row Elementary who heard about the My Dream Playground, and her whole class, and I'll read from here. The students were extremely passionate about this conversation and about Friendship Park. This sparked our next writing piece. For the last month, the kiddos have discussed what universal design means in Friendship Park. We've practiced typing skills and typed up all of our ideas about the new park, and we'd love to share them with the design committee. They're so excited that their designs will be read by the design committee officials. We hope you enjoy reading them as much as we enjoyed creating them. And it's signed Jacqueline DeMary and Megan Kennedy, South Row Elementary School, grade 4. And it's a collection from all of the different students of their drawings, and then actual verbiage about narrative about how they see the things should
Wow.
be designed. So I will scan this in tomorrow and post it along with the others. So I encourage you guys to take a look at it. I haven't even looked through it yet, but just seeing the little bit that I have scanned, I mean, there's some
Yeah, that's
awesome designs in here, so.
What grade are these? 4th grade?
Fourth, yeah.
Wow.
So it's impressive work, and it's exactly the kind of thing I think we were looking for,
So we expect to see all of you 4th graders next Tuesday at 6.
And then our last thing to do is to schedule, well, I should say we have a public input session on February 27th at the Senior Center at 6 p.m. And we'll have a lot of social media activity about that, and then I'll reach out to the Sun and the Independent about helping to promote that as well. And then we need to schedule our March meetings. So the date to really kind of keep in mind here is the town manager will do the final approval on March 9th. And then after that, I think the next milestone is purchasing the equipment on the 16th, and then that's pretty much it. So after the 9th, it's really going to be about fundraising and that kind of stuff. So at least right now, there's not a ton of need for discussion until after the 9th.
So when are we meeting after the public input session? When's our next?
That's what we have to decide now.
So I guess that's the 21st. That's the soonest after the public input session, right?
The soonest would be
No,
March
the
5th
fifth.
Oh,
or
I'm
March
thinking the
7th.
9th. Never mind, okay.
So, and the way I broke them out was the best days are based on the recording opportunities. So, March 5th or 7th are the best days for, and the 21st are the best days fitting with telemedia schedule.
So the 5th or the 7th, we'd have to do to
Yeah.
recommend, otherwise we're not gonna have anything to recommend to the town
True.
manager.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
So it's literally, because none of the rest of the dates are, even the secondary dates are all past the.
Right.
Let's see, 5th.
I'm available both 5th and 7th.
I can't
So it
do
doesn't
the f-
matter
I
to
could
me.
do, I cannot do the 5th, but I could do the 7th.
And I'll tell you too that the next Friends of Roberts Field meeting is March 8th. So, just so you know. So we have 1/7.
1/7, that's all. Yeah, I can't do the 5th. I can do the 7th.
We have 2/7s, I should say. Adele's good on the 7th.
You
You're
can
good
do
on the
7th?
7th.
Yeah.
Elizabeth?
I was just texting Danielle to see if I could get a response from her while we were talking. I'm available either.
Either the 7th or the 5th. So can we say the 7th then?
7th, good?
Do we want to go ahead and put another date in? Do you want to go with the 21st, since it's layered on in the month? Just, we can always cancel it if we don't need it.
I don't think I can make.
Okay.
Actually, I know I can't either. I'm out of town the 21st.
How about the 19th, 27th, 28th? One of those three.
What will we be meeting for at that point? Fundraising?
I think, yeah, I mean, it's hard
I
to say
mean,
for
shouldn't we
sure.
be meeting with FORF at that point for fundraising?
I was thinking maybe we put the date in, and then if something comes up when we need to meet, have the date set.
And
Or if we don't need to meet, I don't want to meet just for the point of meeting. so.
19th should be fine for me.
19th is better for me.
I should be able to do the 19th.
Yes, 19th?
Yeah. The following week, people are not going to see me. I am going to be tied to the kitchen because it's the days before Passover.
And I'll make a note that we'll decide, we'll decide the week before, for the 19th, if we want to keep that date or not.
Okay.
And I'll send an email out. That's it. Any other comments or questions?
So the 19th and the 7th, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And then the 8th is the Friends of Roberts Field, which is held in LO6 on the lower level.
What's this one?
Wait, and sorry, you said the 8th?
Is Friends of Roberts Field, right?
Okay, so we're gonna be meeting on the 7th and then the,
What's this room?
This room is 205.
Is the Friends of Roberts Field meet same time, 7?
7 o'clock, and it's room LO6, which is on the lower level. You go up one flight of stairs, and it's on the corner down there.
Okay.
And it's not televised or recorded.
What's the date on that again?
March 8th. And just to reiterate, we have the public input session on the 27th, starting at 6. And I know that they're going to need help setting up tables and then breaking down tables. So if you can get there, a little early to help move the tables out, that'd be great. The setup's going to be, the AV setup is going to be one long table in the front, 7 seats, and then a screen and a PowerPoint presentation. And then it's at the senior center, I think I said that. And then there's gonna be a podium that someone would go up to and speak, kinda like what was done at town meeting. So we'll have the committee and Megan and Steve at the front, next to the screen. They'll basically do the presentation. And then, there'll be round tables set up with 8 chairs each, and then, the podium for people to go and ask questions.
Right?
cool.
Great.
Okay.
Anything else? 9:10.
Look at that.
All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Did we have to approve the meeting minutes?
We have to approve the last meeting minutes.
We can't because
She's not.
she's not here, and I had sent over some changes, so I don't know if she incorporated those or not. I mean, it's we don't have. I looked today. There's the January and February meeting minutes aren't on the website yet, so we're not holding anything up.
Okay, so next time.
Okay. Then I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn. Thank you.
Thanks.